Thank you. It's great to be here, and I'm really enjoying hearing what everybody is saying. I think I share a lot of what you were hearing from Tom and Jean, in part because we're all in Los Angeles. We've had similar experiences in terms of the COVID. We also have the same county health authorities that manage what happens in our university. So we share some similarities, but it's been, it's really been a ride, and we're still on it. And I think all of us are still learning. I think, like all of you, I've been surprised at how much we've been able to accomplish during this. And in fact, it's been really pretty impressive, and I've been moved by the kinds of things that people do. I'm just showing some pictures. At one point I ran 14 commencements, separate commencements in the Coliseum, 14 of them over a 2-week period. I presided at every single one, and every single student got in-person commencement, and it meant a lot to them. So the things we did do meant a lot. People showed a lot of gratitude, and I thought that was quite beautiful. I also oversee, as does Jean, and I'm sure I know many of you, a very large medical health system, and they're all part of our students, our faculty, our staff, and I think our student health systems were saviors. They were amazing. They worked so incredibly hard, not only keeping us safe, keeping millions of people safe in Los Angeles, but we spend a lot of time not just working in our own hospitals, but we went out and vaccinated and tested the local communities. And we're doing again, administering tests, having your pharmacy students go out. So a lot of interaction with the local community that I think has been very well appreciated, but has been a critical part of our work, and work that we weren't necessarily expecting. So, I was only the president here for 8 months. So I'm a new president even, and I had to meet and learn everybody while being online. So that in itself has been a real challenge. But I'll go through a couple of the same sorts of things, but with the perspective from USC. One thing, in terms of size, we're large. So there's 80,000 people roughly at USC. We have 47,000 students, and they're in 22 different professional schools. So we do everything from dance to dentistry, it is all there. And every single one of them had to move classes online in a 3-day period. They had to go to virtual format. And, when you're trying to teach a dance school, that's different than trying to teach a political science major, and it's different than trying to train clinicians in how to be doctors. And so there was unbelievable innovation in what people did to keep all of those disciplines going once we went online. We created a whole online teaching institute, 1,200 of our faculty, all these workshops. We were doing a lot to help them figure out how to do what they did online. Some of the work that was the most exciting to me, I was amazed that our music students we have the best cinema school potentially in the world, but a really great cinema school. They're still creating movies. They're still doing documentaries. You have your businesses. The things that they did were so creative. I attended a PhD thesis defense by someone that is a conductor. He was getting his PhD in conducting, and he created this amazing online platform, and he conducted, and it was maybe the most entertaining orchestral performance I've ever been to. So there's lots of that, and I think that will be fueling a lot of the creative economy going forward. So we had a lot of innovative faculty. One of our science faculty sent labs home to every single student and made them go out in their garages or out in their backyard and try to do labs. So huge credit to the people that did it. And I think as the same thing you're hearing, we had amazing success for that. That was important. But I think that investment in student teaching was something very important that we did. And I think we have to keep doing it, because we have to get better at developing hybrid courses. I don't think we're going to lose the idea that many courses have an online and an in-person component. So I think a big burst of energy of things. We also had, just in thinking of our international students, I will say that we had over 1,000 of our international students stayed living with us for the 1.5 years of the COVID, because they couldn't go home. They had to live in dorms, there was isolation. So we needed to keep a large percentage of our staff still cooking, working with our online students, trying to deal with their depression from being away with their family, all of that. We wouldn't change it for a moment, but it was a really important part of what we do. I remember bumping into a student who'd been here for almost a year and a half when we were first able to walk around campus, and you could just see he couldn't have been more excited than to bump into a human being after all that time isolated. So things like that were really good. I'll do my next slide, Green, thanks. We didn't see any dip in our recruitment or our retention. We had our highest enrollment in the next fall, and that's in all of our programs. You know, I think like you're seeing, we're actually getting our best students ever. And that was students coming still from 88 different countries. So our international was high, although there was a tiny dip in the master's level student in international, but it's already back up, just as you heard people say. So, you know, we continue to try to do that. And like a lot of my colleagues, we were fighting with the government to keep visas going. That was a big part of our effort early in the pandemic, was trying to continue to keep visas. In the next slide, I'll just talk really briefly about research, because like all of you, we too did not see a dip in research. But I will say, I was talking to a lot of our research faculty that were in the lab. You know, early on, we opened the labs with lots of spacing and lots of protective measures, but some of them developed whole new research areas that were more online, data analytics, and some of them say their research took a whole leap in another direction, and that's been very exciting to them. They also use Zoom to continue their international collaborations, and again, I think that has been important. They also used COVID to spur research. And I know everyone here has seen the same thing. A lot of them weren't necessarily working on COVID, but that became a big part of their research. So in some ways, they were developing new tracing ways. They were doing seed grants, working across institution, and it did end up in our highest research funding ever. In part because it was also directed towards what the country has needed. And now those programs are very invested in continuing in that area. So, you know, I think you see your points of expertise, some of them twisted and moved, but it's pretty exciting to see what it's doing. We also noticed our faculty were so intense that they increased the number of proposals they submitted by 20%. So here they are working at home, taking care of families, elderly parents, children, pumping out research proposals, and we saw an increase in proposals to our Korean sponsors. So that is interesting. We have lots and lots of collaborations, and those were really continuing to grow. We too saw, like the others, that our students actually did better academically, and we had the same thing, Jean, that our students that were first gen and others actually disproportionately performed better. So just like you, that is of real interest to us. Why did that happen? And were we just better teachers? I don't know. All that stuff is a really important thing for us to think about, how we can use that knowledge in the future. So really quickly, let's see, I think I might have another one. This year, they're all back. We were one of the first universities to come back fully because we start early, and it has been phenomenal. Everybody got the vaccine. We have had not one surge, although now Omicron, everyone's gone, but we were starting to see a slight surge on the last day that students were here. We did over 500,000 tests. I mean, this is costing a fortune, but people won't come back if they're not being tested, with a very low 0.2% positivity rate. And most of the classes were in person. We also gave up all of our space at the hotel we run to house our students when they got positive tests for COVID. And we ran a big program for healthcare workers all across Los Angeles to have free stays at our hotel when they got tired or they thought they had COVID and couldn't go home. Then last thing that's an American thing, maybe was true other places, there was a lot of money put out by the government to try to help. We used all that money, and we got something like $50 million to support students who lost their leases, all these extra expenses. We tried to help them so that they didn't go broke, so they could come back. And I think that's why we retained them. I think for a lot of them, that was the difference between dropping out, and we're so much more expensive than probably a lot of other places, but it made a huge difference. And we see the next one. A lot of people coming back. Is there any more slides, Reem?
No more.
Okay, we did, we saw, even in Korea, our Korea graduate students are up 20% over last fall. So I think these things are paying off, but if we have to go into COVID full quarantine again, I think it's going to be a real testament, a try to us, because we had to spend something like $200 to $300 million more during COVID to cover tests, to cover financial aid, to help people with apartments. And there's just not that many years you can continue to try to cover that. So we have to do everything possible to stay in person. So that's a sort of an overview of ours. Thank you.
All right.